David Darnell. Oh, I still have the correct title down there. I didn't even check it. And over here on this title, it says Sunny Danforth is with me tonight. And we're going to talk about some things. How are you doing, Sunny?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good. I'm sorry Don couldn't be with us tonight, and I'm sure glad that you're here filling in for him. It's good. I know we're going to talk a few different things tonight. Doing really well over here. We've kind of had some snow flurries, snowing all day today. No significant measurement of snow, but just enough that it'll be icy tomorrow.
Yeah, yeah. Winter is quickly approaching. And also, my favorite time of the year, the days start getting longer because, as I said on my Facebook post, I'm constantly surprised around midnight every day to find out that it's only 6:30 in the evening because that's what it
I
feels.
know.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about Twitter files tonight, everybody. If you don't have a Twitter account, you can still go read the Twitter files. They're very important. And I'm just going to say one thing before we start off here. I was when I was in Washington D.C. I had a meeting with three people. It was the senior editor of Epic Times, former White House security advisor, and Michael Yon, the world's most experienced combat correspondent. And that was when was it? That was December of 2020, and the thing on everyone's mind, and the Twitter files have a lot to do with this, was the election. And I remember saying to everybody that unless we can get to the bottom of this, half of America will always, forevermore now, from this point on, always question whether or not we had a fair and honest election. And that's kind of the way we are in this country now. And that's the way we are in this state. Until we can get to the bottom of it and find out exactly what has happened, Republicans, when they lose, are going to think that it was a fraud job, with the election. And quite frankly, Democrats do the same thing when they lose. I mean, Clinton said the same thing when she lost in 2016, that there was some sort of fraud going on. And I don't know. I just think it'd be nice if we could get to the bottom of it. If the courts would look at the evidence, if we could, just come to the conclusion that yes, there's fraud, because I'm sure there's been fraud since the very first election was held, whenever that was, in Roman times, probably. But it's not so widespread and rampant that it's swaying elections, or get to the point where we find out that yes, it is widespread and rampant to the way it's swaying elections. But I just think it would be good for everybody to know. And the Twitter files, if you're not up to speed on that, Twitter, I've had a Twitter account since March of 2009. And Twitter back in 2009 was a very vibrant and fun social media platform. Back then, if you haven't used Twitter, and I'm guessing most people have, but if you haven't, it's a short message, instant short message format. Back then, you were limited to 140 characters. I still limit myself to that, even though you can have 280 now. I just think short is better. My best performing tweets of all times, one of them having nearly 2 million views, have been significantly less than 100 characters. But it was a fun and vibrant time, and it was used by the Tea Party that was emerged out of 2009, and that's when we all got into Twitter, and there was near as we could tell that it was what it was. You could post whatever you wanted, as long as you weren't calling for violent insurrection or whatever the hell. I mean, as long as you weren't doing anything illegal, you could say whatever you want. And as Twitter became bigger and more cumbersome, and I think this is in the Twitter files, it kind of lost track of its mission. And as we all know now, Twitter, as well as all of the other social media platforms, include and Google for that matter, the search terms are all heavily biased towards the left. They're all Democrat donors. I think 99% of the money that was donated by Twitter employees went to Democrats. Something like that, 96%, 99%. Just overwhelmingly Democrat. And what we find in the Twitter files after the second richest man in the world now, because he lost $7 billion yesterday. I think it was yesterday, the day before. After Elon Musk bought it for $44 billion, he went through all of the files, and he's finding out that Twitter engaged in a number of practices which were detrimental to conservatives and Republicans. It became kind of a go-to stop for stopping stories, stopping narratives, and stopping the amplification of conservative voices and conservative messages. And we saw, very famously, we saw the removal of Donald Trump from Twitter, who had, as you pointed out, Suni, nearly 90 million followers on Twitter, and that's a lot. Biggest, I think it was the biggest account on Twitter at the time. And so what we're finding out in the Twitter files is, in fact, what we thought all along, what we know is happening on Facebook, right? We know this is happening on Facebook. This show has been banned from YouTube, so we know it's happening at YouTube. We know it's happening, at all the big major Instagram, the big major social media outlets. And the fact of the matter is, none of them like us, right? I mean, they're all run by, wealthy, rich commies for the most part. I guess I'm probably going to get kicked off Facebook for this, aren't we? Sorry, I didn't mean that. I mean, wealthy capitalists. Hell, that's a bad word too, isn't it? But what we find out is in the first part of the Twitter files, and refresh my memory here, I think that's where we find out that that there was some what everyone considered to be shadow banning, which Twitter described as visibility featuring, which is lowering people's posts in the algorithms. We see that in Facebook. We've seen that on our page when we had this on the Oregon Republican Party page, and that they were in fact doing this, and they were doing it without anyone's knowledge, and they had great control over which users could be seen and heard and even searched for. Trending stories were suppressed. Things were kept out of trending topics. Trending topics themselves, which I believe are most likely generated by an algorithm that's measuring how many people are talking about a particular subject, were in fact deleted as well. I remember, during the Trump years in 2016, that I would look for a Trump hashtag that I know is being used, and I would start typing it in, and it wouldn't come down in the drop down. It would Trump's a crook, or Trump lies, or Trump for prison would drop down. But whatever hashtag that millions and millions of people were using at that particular moment, and I happen to know that they were, would not drop down. And that's the kind of stuff that Twitter started doing. And the really, I've always been, I always try to make the distinction, and I think people should make this distinction, that it's not a First Amendment issue for anyone to limit your speech. And I've had knockdown, drag out fights with people over this. But the fact of the matter is if I come into your home and I say some unsavory things to your family, you're going to shut me up and tell me to leave. And the First Amendment has nothing to do with that. The First Amendment prohibits the government from restricting speech. And
therein lies the problem.
Therein lies the problem.
Yes.
So what we have found out is towards the end, and I guess 20. It sounds like it was probably 2018, 19, 2020, somewhere in there. That Twitter employees who were responsible for moderation were having weekly, sometimes daily communications with the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, and other government agencies, as well, particularly in 2020, as the Biden campaign. There's, I think, I'm sure that you read them, Sonny, but I mean, it's shocking to me. It's shot. The real shocking part is looking at the actual communications from Twitter employees discussing banning Donald Trump, discussing removing Bongino, Charlie Kirk, de-amplifying them. It's shocking to me how cavalier and the actual, the huge jumps that they tried to make to justify this stuff. Did you read some of that and get that same impression?
I did. And there were some employees within Twitter that are part of that security, censorship, or whatever you want to call the different departments that said, wait a minute, wait, there hasn't been a violation. So how do you justify, removing this person, or let's talk, or talking about removing this person or this account or what have you, when they actually they haven't violated anything, but wait, they might. Well, wait, I mean, that doesn't make sense. Uh, so it is very, very interesting to read the conversations that they have brought forth and see that there was pushback, there was conversation about why doing that. And then others are threading the needle, going, well, but he's in the example of Trump. He's not violating our rules, but it looks like he's going to incite violence. Well, and yet this was before anything happened. So this to me
Yeah.
sounded like a total planned narrative. In my
Yeah, of course.
opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, were they reading Trump's mind? Hell no, they weren't.
No, they weren't. They were reading into Trump's mind, is what they were doing. They're trying to find, according to the documents, there was a huge amount of pressure from outside and also within Twitter from employees, not necessarily management, except for probably Yoel Roth, who is their head of I don't know, it's so stupid to call it safety and trust and whatever,
Right.
because there's no trust and there's no safety. The
No.
guy's just a flaming left wing liberal. I mean, he is a hard.
Yeah. And he's definitely, you could call him the chief censor. David, I know, has frozen up. We could still hear you if maybe. I don't know. But nope, there you come back.
Yeah, I froze. Anyways, Yoel Roth he was just horrible, horrible person. You read some of the things he, said about other people and everyone in general. But there was a lot of pressure for a long time to get rid of Trump.
Yeah.
Not because he was doing anything wrong, not because he was violating a single policy, but because they didn't like him.
Right.
The employees at Twitter didn't like him. Everybody that the employees at Twitter knew didn't like him. Their friends didn't like him. They just didn't like him because they're all Democrats and, they don't like Trump. So, and then you look at the way that they actually removed him. There was so much pressure after the riot on January 6th, which, in my opinion, was just another day in Portland.
Well,
It was no
actually,
different than any day in Portland.
it didn't start out that way. There wasn't anything. They were all at a rally listening to him.
Mm-hmm.
That was a total, which is not the normal day of Portland. Okay. But what things turned into, you could certainly call it that.
Yeah, I mean,
Although
I think anybody that calls it insurrection is intellectually dishonest,
well, that's the
especially in the
gaslighting
front.
lie.
Yeah, yeah, that's
It
not
is.
insurrection. Insurrections have guns and dead people.
Yeah.
You know.
And so I posted on here an article in the Times in this feed so that you can, if you're not on Twitter, you can get the files right from this article. And it details, how Trump was banned. And so to what I was saying earlier, Weiss wrote that we have to do the right thing and ban this account. So demanded one Twitter employee 3 times in a row, according to this screen grab. Another claimed it was pretty obvious he's going to try to thread the needle of incitement without violating the rules, without elaborating or providing evidence. And one official, Anika Navaroli, argued, I'm I'm not seeing clear or coded incitement in the GDJT tweet. I'll respond to the elections channel and say our team has assessed and found no violations. So, here you have somebody who's going, a top official going, there are no violations. So it was really interesting. It's not surprising once we see all of this, and that we knew that these types of things, have been going on, the censorship and the slowing down on feeds and all of that. But less than 90 minutes after the Twitter employees had determined that Trump's tweets were not in violation of Twitter policy, someone else, the head of the legal, said whether it could in fact be coded incitement to further violence. And 2 hours after that, Weiss reported that Twitter executives held a 30-minute all-staff meeting, including Gad and former CEO Jack Dorsey, and they answered questions about why Trump, who had nearly 90 million followers and used the app extensively, wasn't suspended. And later that day, Twitter announced that it suspended Trump due to the risk of further incitement of violence. Risk? That was absolute gaslighting. He didn't incite any violence at all.
I didn't. And
you
who has had
know,
illegal? Who has had illegal at that time?
that was GAD, GADDE, Gad,
But
Gaddy.
their
I don't
but
know how you pronounce that.
their actual head of their actual legal department was former FBI employee James Baker.
Okay, well, this is Vijaya Gad,
Yeah,
Twitter's head of legal, policy, and trust.
right. But their top lawyer was Baker.
Yes, that's right. And it's amazing to see. I had read a couple of days ago, looking at some different threads from the different releases, that I saw many, many former FBI agents working at Twitter. I was
Yeah.
astounded at
What
that.
is up with that? I mean, I think that pretty much tells us that Twitter was just a government operation. I mean, it was it was an independently owned private company that was making money, but that kind of infiltration by the FBI, I doubt was coincidental, and it pretty much made it an arm of the government. It sounds like to me.
Well, that's what it appears. And I just posted from PJ Media that Jack Dorsey accepts the blame for Twitter scandals. And in that article, you can actually get what he had, his whole thread. And you can follow that, And one thing he says that Jack Dorsey says, social media must be resilient to corporate and government control. Number one. Number two, only original author may remove content they produce. And number three, moderation is best implemented by algorithmic choice. And in further reading of his, he says, I don't want to edit everything into 280 char chunks And so here's the rest. So that's what I just posted from this PJ Media. And I was reading that before we came on tonight.
Oh, I'd
And
like to read that.
he actually goes on to explain that, you know what, it should be open, that if people want to, instead of us being forced what we're going to get that we get to see, we get to opt in to what we would like to our
Yeah.
content to be, instead of it just like in Facebook, you just get thrown. Although I get asked in my Twitter feed, do you want to see, or not my Twitter feed, but my Facebook feed, do you want to see more of this, or do you want to see more of that,
Right.
or less, or whatever?
Right.
And so their algorithm is throwing things at me that they think I would like. So it really, really is interesting in what he has said.
Yeah.
And it's quite long, actually. And it says
Really?
a native internet protocol for social media.
Yeah, I'd like to read that because I know at some point in time, I'm going to say it was probably around 15, 16, maybe 17, somewhere in there. Jack changed, and he seemed like, it almost seemed like from the cryptic communications that he put out, that he had lost control of the company, and it started turning into something that he didn't want it to be. Now, originally in 2009, when I opened my account, there was no algorithmic placement, and so there was no manipulation. You only saw the tweets from the people that you followed,
Right.
and you saw them chronologically.
And so he makes that determination in this thing. Let me just read this little bit to you.
Yeah, do.
The Twitter when I let it and the Twitter of today do not meet any of these principles. This is my fault alone, as I completely gave up pushing for them when an activist entered our stock in 2020. I no longer had hope of achieving any of it as a public company with no defense mechanisms, lack of dual class shares being a key one. I
Right.
planned my exit at that moment, knowing I was no longer right for the company. The big mistake I made was continuing to invest in building tools for us to manage the public conversation versus building tools for the people using Twitter to easily manage it for themselves. And this burdened the company with too much power and opened us to significant outside pressure, such as advertising budgets. I generally think companies have become far too powerful, and that became completely clear to me with our suspension of Trump's account. As I've said before, we did the right thing for the public company business at the time, but the wrong thing for the internet and society. Much more. And he goes on to explain, this is quite long, actually. And and I really like as he explains, they should have built tools for the people using Twitter,
Right.
instead of the
Right.
company. How do you manage the conversation?
Yes. It's
And
it's the exact same thing that's happened to our federal government and many of our state governments. We
yes,
should have been passing laws to limit government and not passing laws to keep citizens from doing things, because
yeah,
that's what the Constitution was designed to do, is to limit government and allow people to pursue life, liberty, and happiness.
yeah. So I'm going to paste that one that's directly from him right here
So
in
my
this.
big question here, and this is probably going to be even a bigger kind of a rabbit hole for me, is who is the activist investor, and who is funding them, and who are their friends, and who do they talk to on a regular basis?
Right.
So, and are those same investors? Of course, we know that BlackRock and Vanguard, Main Street are.
Yeah, we're going to learn more, as I think, as we read these different files that are coming out, and following along with what Jack Dorsey, his statement and his commentary that he wrote. I think we're going to learn more about that, David.
I'd very much like to learn that, and I'd like to. And I don't know where I froze, but I'd like to know if those same investors are taking advantage of Alphabet that owns Google and Meta that owns Facebook and Instagram and some of the other large digital platforms that control much of the discourse in the world. That's a lot of power. I mean, Google has probably more power than the president of the United States. The only thing they don't have, is a military, although they could probably afford one.
And so, and Jack Dorsey actually talks about that in here, in this his statement. He talks about that. He says, back to the principles. Of course, government wants to shape and control the public conversation and will use every method at their disposal to do so, including the media. And the power a corporation wields to do the same is only growing. And it's critical that the people have tools to resist this and that those tools are ultimately owned by the people. Allowing a government or a few corporations to own the public conversation is a path towards centralized control.
Right. And that's what Twitter was circumvented at the very beginning. Andrew Breitbart was famously changing the way reporting and news was made, and he did that on Twitter. He said if you have a cell phone with a camera on it, you're a reporter. All of this stuff was posted without any censorship or moderation whatsoever on Twitter in the early days. And the fact was that at that point in time, Twitter was the fastest, most comprehensive, and most accurate source of news in the whole world. I mean, I knew on Twitter when bin Laden was killed 20 minutes before it hit the news because it was on Twitter. And that's the way Twitter was. And to some extent, Twitter is still used extensively by news organizations, media, to find out what the hell's going on. I know I use it for that. If I want news, I go to Twitter. And that's what Jack had built in the early days. And it sounds like from what he is writing here that he recognized that he lost it, and that the government, it sounds to me like government just kind of took over Twitter, and we know we know there's a back channel for government agencies to Facebook. That's been reported.
There is.
Yeah.
And to the other, and to many of the other social medias, and I'm not all of them. Now, let me just continue on this a minute. He says, I do still wish for Twitter and every company to become uncomfortably transparent in all their actions. And I wish I forced more of that years ago. I do believe absolute transparency builds trust. As for the files, I wish they were released WikiLeaks style, with many more eyes and interpretations to consider. And along with that, commitments of transparency for present and future actions. I'm hopeful all of this will happen. There's nothing to hide, only a lot to learn from. And that is the truth. That is the truth. There really isn't anything to hide except for those that are being deceitful. And there is certainly a lot to learn from. The current attacks on my former colleagues could be dangerous and don't solve anything. If you want to blame, direct it at me and my actions or lack thereof. As far as a free and open social media protocol goes, there's many competing projects. At Blue Sky is one with the AT protocol, the @ sign. Mastodon another, Matrix yet another, and there will be many more. One will have a chance at becoming a standard like HTTP and SMTP. This isn't about a decentralized Twitter. This is a focused and urgent push for a foundational core technology standard to make social media a native part of the internet. And I believe this is a critical both to Twitter's future and the public's conversation's ability to truly serve the people, which helps hold governments and corporations accountable and hopefully make it a lot more fun and informative again. and he's actually giving grants away. And he's going to be
Really?
giving money to Signal.
Really?
I'm on Signal. You're on
Yeah.
Signal. I don't know how many of
I
our
use
viewers
Signal
are
quite a
on
bit. I
Signal.
use Signal quite a bit, actually.
Yeah. And so
Michael Yan and I communicate mostly over Signal. Even when we talk on the phone, it's usually through Signal.
So he says, to accelerate open internet and protocol work, I'm going to open a new category of hashtag start small grants, open internet development. It will start with a focus on giving cash and equity grants to engineering teams working on social media and private communication protocols, Bitcoin, and a web-only mobile operating system. And I'll make some grants next week, starting with 1 MM. I'm not sure how many that is.
It's $1 million.
Well, I know a 1M is $1 million.
No, actually, it's 1 MM. M is
Okay.
1,000.
K is 1,000. See, I was thinking anyway.
Well,
Okay.
yeah. M is 1,000. K is 1,000. MM is 1,000. 1,000.
Okay. So there we go. $1 million a year to Signal. So that's
Yeah.
what he's next week, starting with $1 million a year to Signal. Please let me know of other candidates for this money. I like it. He's going,
Yeah.
you know what? Hey, let's change this.
Yeah.
Let's change it. And he's willing to help be part of the solution. And I'll tell you, when anybody in business, you're bound to make mistakes, and you learn by those. You grow by those, and you learn by those. And it's there's a lot coming to light. Tomorrow, maybe more's coming out. We'll see. So good for him.
Yeah. Well, he certainly recently got a big chunk of cash. So, I mean, when Elon Musk bought Twitter, I mean, it was he bought every share, and
Yes, he did.
yeah, and Jack has billions of shares left, or billions of dollars worth of shares left for sure. So he's certainly sitting fat on cash, and I'm glad to hear that. He takes not only takes responsibility, but he'll probably shed some light on what's wrong. Well, apparently he already has. What's wrong with digital media? What's wrong with the collusion between government and companies? We all know, and we've known for years. We've known since the Breitbart years, or that's when it came into my purview, that the mainstream media, like television stations and newspapers, have a very tight relationship with government. We know that stories are printed that are handed to them by the governor's office. We know in the state of Oregon that the governor's office called Facebook in September of 2020 and told them to remove all stories or chatter about the fires that were going on, 1 million acres worth of fires, remove every reference to arson. That story came out. We knew that. And we know that Facebook and Instagram has a backdoor room, for government to come in and violate the First Amendment rights of its citizens, which is exactly what it was doing in Twitter. And we know that's exactly what they're doing in Facebook, in YouTube, in Instagram, and Google. I mean, if you think about the power that Google has, because we all use it, right? Even if you use another browser, they're using Google servers. Everybody needs to know that, because you use DuckDuckGo doesn't mean that you're not using Google. You are using Google or Brave. Everything runs on Google servers. When we use it and we ask the internet something, it filters what we see. And it filters what we see based on the most comprehensive and long-term information gathering that has ever been ever happened in the history of civilization. I mean, Google knows, the people in Google that talk about what Google knows say that you haven't you can't even comprehend what they know about you, because they have this. They
Right.
know everywhere you go, regardless of whether you have location on. They know where you go. They know what you see. They know what you say. They know who your friends are. They know everything about you. And so when we ask them about, if we ask them about, January 6th, they know exactly what it is we want to hear, or they know exactly what it is that they think we need to hear. And they're gonna push that agenda on us. And I'm sure that the back door at Google, and maybe, I don't know, maybe I should stop talking about this, because it's all being it's all being it's all being recorded by Google. Maybe I'll just get, deplatformed for life, which, hey, I live, what, 30 some odd years without, or 35 years, 40 years without an internet. I mean, I can do it. It's not that big a deal. But I forget where I was going with
Well,
that,
the
but
internet is a good thing, but
it is.
but all of the data, is something else. And as I was listening to what you're saying, so recently I went to the post office. Now they want data. Or the U.S. Postal Service, they want data. So I'm shipping something, registered return receipt. It's an envelope. Hello, okay? It's an envelope. Registered return receipt. Well, I need to have your name and your address. And going, what? And
Yeah,
I asked them, so what's this data for? Well, I got deer in the headlights. Look, they don't have a clue. You're asking, I know that I'm asking the wrong people,
sure.
but you know, it is a lot of data collection. And now I didn't realize that everything is run on Google servers. Now, we've got big data centers over here in my neck of the woods.
You do.
Yes, we
Some
do.
of the biggest.
Yes, we
Yeah,
do.
Facebook, Google, Instagram, everyone's over in Central Oregon, because electricity is cheap, and they use just a god awful amount of electricity.
Yeah, and
Uh,
they're using water from the river to cool to
yeah.
cool all the equipment and whatnot. But
Yeah, I mean, essentially, Google has an absolute lock worldwide on the internet. I mean, the entire internet is contained upon their servers for the most part. You can have a private server. I suppose, you could deny access to Google, and then you wouldn't be subject to Google. But almost no, And I remember back when I used Netscape. You know, I was. I remember when Google first came out. I remember people saying, "Oh, hey, have you tried Google?" No, and you try it, and oh yeah, that works a lot better. And we've noticed over the years that uh, the search results are changing. I just noticed it yesterday. There's a new format when you scroll down to the bottom of your search results. Now they're putting the search results in a social media uh, graphic for you. They're feeding it to you like a TikTok or Instagram or Facebook. But I
wow,
remember back in the old days when you search something, um, it wasn't very intuitive. Google was not very intuitive. It didn't know that you were misspelling. It didn't know any of that stuff. But it would, you'd get such a disparate fragments of knowledge that at times it was difficult to use. But none of it was filtered out. None of it was not available. And it is today. And the real problem with that, you and me and most people our age, we can live without the damn thing. I mean, you know, I it doesn't bother me that much. But the real problem here, getting back to the Twitter files, is that government is using it. Government, as Jack said, has a huge interest in controlling the narrative, controlling the conversation, and controlling the information that its people, that its citizens, the people who vote for them, the people who pay the outrageous taxes to feed them, that's who they want to control. And man, it's just not, it's not what America was intended to be. And I just feel so bad, for the most part, that we have generations of Americans that don't know what America should be.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And so to answer, Pat says it makes sense to get your contact info if you want to know when something was delivered. No, they send you back one of these green things in the mail, and that tells me that it was delivered. And, so they don't need my contact information at the post office. They don't need mine. They don't need yours. They don't need David's,
Yeah.
And I really do wonder what the hell that all that data is for. And so there's supposed to be something. I also saw President Trump, former President Trump, is going to make some announcement tomorrow. I don't have any idea what it is. And then something tomorrow, maybe from the Twitter that has to do with COVID. I have no idea. And what there's a lot coming out about the jab and
Yeah.
the
You had some
effect of
interesting,
that.
some
And
interesting stuff on that before the show.
yeah, I think that'll be a good topic for Friday.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. The effects of our whole Operation COVID are still being sorted out. I mean, I think from the people who know, the people whose whose checkbooks have many, 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 many zeros behind them, we're headed towards that recession. That was in large part COVID lockdown, government COVID response produced. So yeah, I mean, there's COVID is, man, I remember we broke these stories long ago, and we said long ago too, doesn't it seem like 2 years ago is long ago?
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
it's like, yeah, and 2019 was like a whole different life and a whole different world than the last, well, it's just been 2 years.
Yeah.
2 years just seems like forever ago, but we said all this stuff 2 years ago that this is not going to end well.
This is
And
how Captive Audience got started. We
it
were
is.
captive.
We were captive.
We
Yeah.
were. And
We
they're
were.
starting to a school in Oregon has said, okay, we've got to start masking up this kids.
Yeah.
I saw a little ding on that. We got to start masking up the kids because all the flu and that's going around and whatnot. I want to answer two questions. Bobby and Marjorie asked, what is Signal? Signal is an app, just like and you can also use it on your computer. And it is a way to communicate, a communication app that is
Encrypted.
And
it has end-to-end encryption. And so in theory, unless it had a backdoor in it, your communications cannot be intercepted or read, and it's user supported. There's no advertising.
Yeah.
On Signal. So
none.
I remember, I think about once a year, I think I get a message from Signal saying, hey, would you please donate? Because that's how they're running. So I'm glad to hear that Jack is taking an interest in Signal, because it works pretty good. I hate to say it. The reason I hate to say this is because it makes me sound like I'm doing something nefarious, but I want secure communications. I want to be able to talk freely to you or anyone else and say whatever it is I want to say. I mean, really anything, like I would face to face with my close friends. I can say anything. And if I say something that's, could be construed as, either off color or, could be construed in a different way, because I'm face to face with you, what I mean, when I'm saying
Right.
it, and and I just and the reason for that is government. Government. We've seen time and time again, and I think we're going to see it more and more again, more and more as we go throughout the years, as the government is using this information, and they're colluding with corporations. And we all hear the talk about how if we go to a digital currency, that you can say the wrong thing on Facebook and your debit card won't work. I don't think that's a big stretch at all.
I don't either. I pay cash. You know what? Cash, I posted on my own Facebook page the other day about $50. If you pay 50, I pay a bill with $50, and that business is going to pay another bill with $50, and it goes around and it remains $50. But you pay $50 with your debit card or your credit card, all of the fees that are associated, and it keeps going around. And after about 45 transactions, I think that was the number, 45 transactions, it's only $5. All the rest of that $50 has gone to fees. And that's why the
Really?
banks love you. Yes, the banks love you to use your ATM, use your credit card, because everybody's paying fees.
Huh. Interesting.
And I just went, yeah, cash is king. Cash is still king.
Cash is king. And you know what? Banks will charge you a fee for depositing too much cash.
Oh, I didn't know that. I haven't had that problem, David.
And they are steep fees.
Wow.
Yeah.
I belong to a credit union, and there's, interesting.
Yep. In my business, it's almost all cash. And and the only people that will give us a bank account is a credit union, and they charge us mob fees for depositing. I forget what it is, more than 30 or 50,000 in cash, and our expenses are $350,000 a month. So we have to pay through the nose to put that cash into the bank, to use the bank instrument to pay the bills. Either that, or we run around and we pay everybody with cash, which is one way we do it. But it's kind of hard.
Wow, that is hard, and actually, I had no idea that happened. I had no idea that happened. And because we have rental properties on a particular bank, I won't say their name, which I'm no longer with. When we had opened the accounts, I told them that we have some rental units, and they said, well, are you going to be depositing large amounts of cash? And I said, what does that matter? So now with this answer, I went, because I thought that's an odd question. To me, it was an odd question. And, but no longer with them, because they're, anyway, with a different bank. They didn't ask me that question.
Yeah, everything's been screwed up. I mean, if it wasn't the Patriot Act, then it was Dodd-Frank. I mean, everything is just everybody. You can't go to a bank, and I couldn't go to your bank and deposit cash into your account.
Right.
I could go there and deposit. $51,000 money orders, or I could deposit a check for $50,000. But I can't even put $100 cash in your bank account.
No, it's strange. It's strange. And it's strange. I mean, now they want to
it is strange.
$600, if you've got PayPal or Venmo and all of that. And frankly, I've canceled my PayPal account. I don't know about the rest of you, but I just go, you know what? I don't need that. I'm not doing that.
I don't use mine. So
I haven't used mine in years. It was very convenient when we lived on our sailboat, but I haven't been doing that now for a number of years.
Yeah, I must admit, I do like digital. I do like being able to pay bills digitally. I have to admit, I really like that. But I could go back to paying in cash. That would be okay with me too. I would buy less things and I would have more money.
Yeah. Well, there'd be a lot, that's how banks make a lot of money, is on the fees of what they charge.
Yeah.
And credit card fees, them and the insurance companies, they're the ones with the tall buildings, right? In every community.
Well, yeah, the insurance companies are the ones that banks go to get loans.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, guys. Well, hey, we've had a long session here. I hope you've enjoyed our discussion on Twitter and other things that are not necessarily
Yeah.
news related, but anyway, you know what? That's okay. We're not just a news thing. We are here to help talk about some things that maybe you've not heard about or whatnot. So spread the message, and hopefully, we're not kicked off.
Yeah. Yeah. And if we are kicked off, I take full responsibility because I think it's the things that I say that get us kicked off of the various things because I don't have too much of a filter.
But you'll have to find us somewhere else. We're on Twitter too, right? I'm not on Twitter, but are we on Twitter?
Yes, we are. We are. Yeah.
Okay.
I'd like to get the login information from Kevin on that so I can promote that a little bit better. I've run dozens of Twitter accounts at the same time and still continue to run several. So,
Okay. Well,
all right.
everybody, have a great night, and we will be back on Friday.
Right. We will. Good night, everyone. And in case I get run over by a truck tomorrow, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.